want to welcome you all. Thank you for being here. It's a lot to give up some time on a Saturday to pursue your own calling, and I appreciate it very much. I've got a few slides. I'll just tell you a little bit about who I am before my slides come up. My name is Marilyn Schlitz. I have been involved in this field of transpersonal psychology, transpersonal studies for decades, and came through various academic routes. I hold a PhD from the University of Texas. I did my postdocs, one at Stanford and one in a cognitive sciences lab. I was at the Institute of Noetic Sciences for about 24 years, which specializes in consciousness studies and kind of these expanded reaches of human potential. I started here at Sophia in October, and I run the PhD programs here. And I have to say it's a great privilege and an honor to be here. So hi to everybody out there, and welcome to you in here. And
all right, and as soon as I get back to Zoom, I will actually be able to share this.
And I think a big part of what this program is about is transformation. We can think about the metaphor of the butterfly as it emerges out into the world in remarkable ways. And I think that provides a kind of image for us to hold as each of us recognize our own growth, the struggle that happens within us as we attempt to reach out into the world. Okay, so this slide really is indicative of the times we're living in, and the notion that all of us are constantly bombarded by the weapons of mass distraction. We live in a time where we have voicemail, email, snail mail, all of the various complexities of this technology we're trying to work with. And I think part of our challenge is how to find our balance in the midst of all this. So how do we manage this kind of complexity? What are the skill sets that we need to be fully capable in a 21st century world? And how can we move from coping to flourishing? I think that's the kind of work Ross was talking about when he said that so much of psychology is about the pathological aspects. And there is a lot of that. So as we're feeling stressed and anxious and overwhelmed, it takes a lot of inner capacity in order to maintain our balance. And then once we've come from that place of balance and integrity, how do we then grow to this place of flourishing and really engaging our largest human potential? So the PhD program here is organized into two components. There's a residential component and an online component. By far the largest student body takes place in the global PhD program. And that allows people all over the world to participate together in various programs. So Nancy just talked about the master's program, the 2 years, and the PhD program then builds on that. So we have a 3-year program. The first 2 years are coursework, and the third year is dissertation. And it's really designed for students who are seeking exceptional learning experiences. They want not only to get the content, get the scholarship, but they're also really looking to learn practices and capacities that allow them to grow and change. And as I said, it's both residential and global. So the question, I guess, for all of you is, what calls you to be here today? What calls you to think that a transpersonal perspective would be valuable? Is it career development? Because clearly what we're seeing in things like, as Ross mentioned, sports, how do you manifest that optimal performance? And we know now that these transpersonal principles are of great demand, of great interest to many people in many domains of life, business and healthcare. Is it about your own personal insight? Is it about a balance between your career development and your own personal growth? Your desire to be curious and engaging with the world, your desire to start to see those complexities that we experience in a new way and to begin to find that resilience. Networking. Clearly, because it is a global program, we have people from all over the world. One of the women in my current course called in from Siberia. We have people in China, we have people in India, we have people all over the United States and Canada, South America. So it becomes a very interesting creative classroom when we're using this kind of technology. And of course there's other reasons. Some people come for visa. They look for a way in and then discover that there are questions that they're asking themselves that they didn't even know they had. So sometimes I just like pretty pictures. They let us pause and think about what's really up for us. So the Sophia PhD offers this mastery of the scholarship, allows us to think about what are these dimensions of the transpersonal, how do we combine not only psychology, but other domains. So I have a degree in medical anthropology, for example. How do those cultural dimensions influence and impact? And then what are the application of these transpersonal skills for every domain of lived experience? And I think we can find it in our parenting, in our personal relationships, as well as in the context of our professional work and in our involvement in our communities. So the transpersonal focus involves multiple dimensions, more than I can really illustrate here, but we know that it's about transformations in worldview. If we are living in this time of enormous change, and we're confronted with all the multiplicities of different perspectives, worldviews, belief systems, religions, political persuasions, how do we master our own capacity to move into something that has yet to be born? And that's a challenge and an opportunity. And then there's this idea of self-transcendence. Through meditation, through a variety of spiritual practices, we can move from this sense of the me into a broader sense of the we. And I think at the same time it's important to remember that you can't have a healthy me by simply giving everything to the we. So how do we find that balance between our contribution to society and that nourishing of our own inner resources? Human growth and well-being. We teach about different aspects of healing traditions. We look at different ways in which things like mindfulness and positive psychology have bearing spiritual dimensions that are a part of who we are. How do we begin to integrate those? As Nancy mentioned, creative expression, it's a part of us. It's a fundamental aspect of how we can gain and grow in this world. States of consciousness. We have a course being offered this quarter with Stanley Krippner, looking at extraordinary states of consciousness. Stanley's somebody who was one of the pioneers in transpersonal psychology, humanistic psychology. My own course this quarter is being taught with Deepak Chopra, and it's on multiple epistemologies around death and the afterlife. So looking at how people have engaged their own experiences of embodiment, but also what do they think happens next, and how does that inform how they live their lives? Pro-social engagement. As I am working on my own personal development, how does that speak to my ability to give and to be engaged? And then resilience in the face of all of this. How do I learn to harden and soften at the same time? So the learning objectives for the program: knowledge, as we talk about the scholarship. Application. We're really emphasizing now the integration between various schools. So I think Ross was the one that mentioned we have computer science and business as well as psychology. How do we begin to infuse all those? If you're a practitioner with a PhD in psychology, maybe you want to learn some entrepreneurship skills. Maybe you want to be able to develop your own leadership abilities. All of those things become integral. Written communication. So this is a very important part of what we're doing. As you work your way through the various stages of the program, how can you become a better communicator? And we'll help you with that. On the Sophia website, there's a wonderful portal for learning to write. We have a professor in the program who specializes in helping work with our students so that they can really get the upper hand on their own communication. Research. We have a couple of research projects. In your packet, there's one that we're working on right now. This is an interesting study that I'm running in partnership with the Institute of Noetic Sciences, looking at precognition and people's ability to potentially know the future. And in particular, it's got a little twist to it, which is that we're also looking at the role of expectations and beliefs on the part of the experimenter. So in science, we assume there's an objective world out there, and that scientists somehow manipulate that and therefore get answers to truth. But what we find is that the belief system, the awareness, the expectations of investigators, not only in parapsychology or kind of more fringe areas, but mainstream psychology is finding a serious challenge with what goals and expectations do these investigators have, and how does that influence replication in science? And we're finding it in physics, we're finding it in biology. It's a fascinating topic, and so this is a global collaboration. The study that we're starting is the third, where we have systematically looked at different ways in which we can either measure or manipulate these expectations to see if it actually has bearing on a randomized double-blind protocol. So, and we're looking for experimenters and participants. So there's opportunities for people to get involved not only in this kind of research, but their own personal research, and a PhD ultimately leads to that when you're doing a dissertation. Critical thinking. So in addition to all this creativity we're talking about, it's also important for us to be able to discern and to be able to evaluate in a systematic way what is true for us. I mean, we're living in this absolutely bizarre time where we have the false media, and we have, you know, I won't go into politics, but the idea that we have a reality show host who's now the president. You know, we have all of these various kind of conflicting messages about how do we construct truth, and how do we get through all the sources of information that come to us through the internet. These are tasks and challenges that require critical thinking, and so each of us can learn more about that. And the other thing about, I think, Sophia's unique representation of this kind of critical thinking is that it isn't only about the rational ways of knowing. It's not only that our brain takes in this information and we get the facts, just the facts, ma'am, but we also know that we have intuition. We also know that there are ways in which our sensory and extrasensory means may influence what we know to be true. And so this becomes a unique defining characteristic of our programs. This information literacy, it goes again to the idea that there are these discrete experiences and perspectives that different cultures, different worldviews represent. How can we develop within ourselves the capacity to not necessarily believe everything we hear, but to respect and appreciate the differences? Because as clinicians, as good citizens in the world, it's important for us to be able to come from that place of respectful engagement. And so learning about different worldviews, different belief systems becomes an important part. Professional development, people take these degrees and do many things with them. I think Nancy mentioned this, but you know, it has applications in business and healthcare and education, just in our lives and enriching who we are. And then the social contribution. As we are engaged, as we are building a critical mass, perhaps we can begin in a new way to effectively change some of the challenges that we face as a civilization. So the curriculum requirements, this is available to you in your packet on this little page here. We are in the process of reformulating the catalog, so this is the new catalog, the new requirements that are coming up with next quarter. So it's 75 units to get the PhD. This is on top of your master's. So required courses, there's going to be 32 units for required and 28 units for electives. The dissertation constitutes 15 units. We have a dissertation office that supports and nourishes people in that process. We actually have, as one of the requirements, a mini proposal which sets the stage for your dissertation so that people don't have to feel overwhelmed. And then we have concentrations, and there's 15 units per concentration. So these are the required courses. We have a seminar twice a year. The seminar will be in the spring quarter, and anybody who's coming in, we invite you to that. It's an opportunity to get to know your cohort, an opportunity to build that kind of network and community. People love it. Critical Thinking and Academic Writing Seminar. This is something that, again, helps people in their communication skills, helps them to be prepared when they have to do a dissertation. When I did my dissertation, somebody in the dissertation office got a ruler out and measured my margins. This is true. So these are the things that in order to pass a dissertation, you have to know. And there's many other things, obviously, besides margins. But, you know, good citations, references, making sure your writing is good, your grammar is clean, all of that kind of stuff, we support that. Advanced Seminar in Transpersonal Psychology. Integral research skills. This is a wonderful program. We encourage people to start with this because what it allows people to do is gain inquiry into their own inner process. So if I'm going to engage in a research project that's going to lead to a dissertation and potentially lead to a lifelong research agenda, what is true for me? If I'm going to spend that much time, what is calling me personally? So this course really represents a way of gaining access to that. And then both qualitative and quantitative research methods, we're very interested. We're going to be offering a course next quarter on advanced research methods, which includes quantitative. The person teaching it, his name is Arno Delorum. He's also my colleague on this research study. Arno invented the go-to EEG package for analyzing brainwave activity. He's a superstar in neuroscience. He's also got a lot of chops around different kinds of analytical methods. So it is a nice balance to the internal inquiry that comes from the integral research as well as qualitative. So there's the qualitative, which is much richer, an opportunity to kind of map meaning in different domains. And then there's the quantitative. How do I figure out what the numbers are? What are the statistics I need in order to be able to test hypotheses? Transformative learning theory. All of us are learning. The learning is a process of growth. So that's one of our core. And then cognition, affect, and consciousness. This course in the spring will also be taught by one of the leaders in the area of cognitive and neuroscience who will come in on part of the global program. This mini proposal, I mentioned this, as people are gearing up to do a dissertation, they start with a mini proposal, which allows them to really begin to map out what are the methods I need. Are these the best methods? And who's the population? And I think a lot of people, when they start a dissertation, think they're going to do it all. And that's a big mistake. There is life beyond dissertation, I can assure you. So how do you find, the appropriate sample size? How do you figure out who's the population you really want to study in order to be able to answer a very circumspect question? Because dissertations aren't everything. They're a focused process of inquiry. And then internships and practicum. A lot of this is for our foreign students, visa students. We also have the opportunity to substitute some of the internship for electives. All right, then the concentrations, transpersonal education and research. So if you want something in addition to the PhD in your dissertation, you can concentrate in particular areas. Applied transpersonal psychology. So David's here, he's representing the business. This is where I talked about if people want to learn some entrepreneurship or coaching or other ways of engaging, practical skills that they can take into their lives. This allows a concentration in that. Whole systems health and well-being. It's a lot of my own work. I've been studying cross-cultural healing. We've been looking at the various ways in which positive psychology and pro-social psychology, spiritual psychology, all of these things come together to show that we're body, mind, spirit, and society. And so all of those dimensions become important. And then, as Nancy mentioned, this consciousness and creativity studies. Some of the neuroscience, cognitive science pieces fit in there, as well as some of the more expansive and creative places. Collaborations, we really want to reach out to our community. This is an important piece of how this next phase of Sophia is growing. We're really reaching out to our partnerships. So the Chopra Foundation, Deepak Chopra is one of the faculty here. He and I are co-teaching this class, as I mentioned. It's been a wonderful experience. I got all these great lectures by Deepak and myself, and we've even got Ken Wilbur in there on this course this semester. The Institute of Noetic Sciences, this research project, for example, is a collaboration. We're in conversations with them about creating some public programs around the science of meditation. The Esalen Institute, this is kind of a new area. We're talking about having a sort of a showcase program at Esalen. And if you don't know Esalen, you should check it out. It's glorious. It's a beautiful, transformative research center on the Pacific Coast in Big Sur, and it's the place where a lot of this transpersonal stuff grew up. It was sort of grounded at Esalen at a particular time, and then ITP and some other organizations grew up sort of shortly after. The Transformation Technology Lab that Jeffrey Martin runs is here. Our intention is to grow that. The research project I mentioned is part of it. We'll begin to look at some brainwave activities and look at different ways in which transpersonal experiences affect body, mind, and spirit. So in conclusion, this is a Rumi quote. There is a force within which gives you life. Seek that. In your body lies a priceless gem. Seek that. Oh, wandering soul, if you want to find the greatest treasure, don't look outside. Look inside and seek that. So that's the essence of what we're offering here, and I'm happy to take a couple questions. I've got about 5 minutes. Observations? Things you'd like to share?
So on the sheet, in the required courses, I counted the units was 35, but the required courses said it was 32 units. So I'm wondering which of these is maybe a part of a different, maybe it's the internship piece?
I think so, yeah, that got added after I made the slide. That's actually not, the required course with the internship, so that adds up 3, 6, 9, 10.
And then I have a question about the internship practicum.
Okay, you caught me on my math. We'll fix that.
Yeah, no worries. So the internship practicum, I'm currently in the counseling psychology program in a practicum site. So is there a certain kind of practicum internship you're looking for, or
it needs to be something that's coherent with your specialization. So in your case, a clinical approach, it would need to be something. One of our students, for example, is focusing on transpersonal education, and so her internship is actually in a school where she spends a significant amount of her time doing very practical work that is relevant to her approach.
Just seems to be relative to my focus in the doctoral program.
Well, and in your case, you're in the PsyDoc program.
But that's not what I'm interested in the PhD in transpersonal psychology.
Okay.
Those are my interests. I'm getting my clinical background right now. Those are my thoughts that was important. So I'm in a practicum right now, but I would like to make sure that anything that I would go into in the PhD in transpersonal psychology could somehow be relevant to the practicum site that maybe that I'm currently at, or but right now it's training therapy work.
Yeah. Well, why don't you come? We'll talk about what it is, because it's kind of a customized thing for the internships.
Okay.
And they're also, unless you need it for a visa reason, you have the option of not having it.
Okay.
So you could do electives instead. And I would think that course that Arno DeLorme is going to be offering could be of direct interest to you.
Okay. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for catching my temper.
Okay.
Anybody else? Okay, I answered it all. Thank you.